Hello teachers, and welcome back to Teachers Help Teachers. I'm your host, Esther Yoon, and with me again is Amanda Campos. She's a fellow teacher at my school. You've seen her present a couple of more times before today, so thank you again for being generous with your time, and welcome back, Amanda, to Teachers Help Teachers. Thank you.
Hello.
So Amanda, I brought Amanda here today because I want to talk to Amanda. Amanda and I are going to have an exchange of ideas about accountable talk. According to this book, and if you know about it, awesome, and if you don't, you need to pick it up. It's such a good book. Visible Learning for Mathematics. According to this book, there are levels of learning. And there's surface and deep learning that leads to transfer. And I want to explore accountable talk that happens during deep learning with my colleague and friend, Amanda Campos. She's a champion for all learners, especially for our ELD population. And I heard about accountable talk from her a few times already. And so for me, when I was thinking about producing this episode, it was a no-brainer to invite Amanda back to talk about accountable talk. So during accountable talk, students are expected to remain on topic, present accurate information, and think about what others have said. It's a discussion time. Sometimes there are disagreements. And that's important too during accountable talk, because it's a teachable moment for students to disagree in a way that's productive, courteous, and respectful. And if I can just put in my 2 cents, Amanda, I think this world needs to remember how to do that.
I agree.
That it's okay.
I agree.
To disagree, but
it's okay.
to hear each other out in a productive, respectful, courteous way. And so, and our students do it, right, Amanda? They do.
Yeah.
We teach upper grade while I teach primary, and they do in all grades and all levels, and and so let's get to it and let's get started. So Amanda, what supports can teachers provide for accountable talk? Why don't you take it away, and I'll share too.
So I definitely think that one of the bigger heavy hitters is language frames, right? Sentence frames, however you want to call them, but essentially giving the students that language to use to be able to have that agreement or disagreement, or relating back to when somebody says something. I think that's a real important one for us to do, and constantly. I think that we've talked about this, but it's definitely not a one and done situation. It can't be done in the beginning and then not modeled again. It has to constantly come in the conversation in order to really allow our students to digest it. And then when they don't use those sentence frames, just reverting them back to them. Oh, that was great. Can you say it in an academic way? Or can you use one of our sentence frames that we've discussed?
Yeah, for me, when I hold an accountable talk in whatever topic or subject that we're covering, I use a lot of revoicing. Revoicing is where you hear what the student says and just say it again. And I encourage students to restate. So revoicing is a teacher move, while restating is a student move, where they do retell what they just heard, but then apply it or give an example of what the student that they heard from, who they heard from, might have just shared. you know, that student engagement is such a huge priority, especially in learning. And we're not going to say, oh, we can't do that during remote learning, accountable talk.
Mhm.
No, we can definitely do that. And Amanda and I will share ideas of how to do that during remote learning. But that student engagement, it has to be there in order for any learning to happen, especially that deep learning, so that they can transfer what they learn to other areas of other learnings, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Amanda, let's talk about the student role then, since we just mentioned the teacher role. What is expected out of the students during accountable talk? What do you look for when you do that?
So I do expect the students to follow conversation norms. So using their think time, we talk about thinking before you speak. Using the language that we appropriate for depending on subject. So I know then the upper grades, well, I guess you can do it in lower grades too, but really using the different types of language based on the skill that you're working on, and then learning how to do that. So. And then using complete sentences. I do expect them to use complete sentences, asking for clarification, whether that's from me or their peers. So if they don't understand something from their peers, then they also say, can you say that again? Can you restate that for me? Using things like that. And then I really try and hone in on just prizing participation. So as just asking them to participate. So I do expect them to participate in some way as well.
Yeah, and we'll get into how students participate verbally, but also non-verbally, so that, again, that student engagement is present as they are listeners and speakers. For me, I expect, students to listen attentively and use language frames, like you said. And I want them to follow the norms. And just a little tip: make sure that the norms match your rules. You don't want those things conflicting. So just be aware of how your expectations and norms and rules, all of that, don't contradict, but are aligned. That was a helpful tip in that book. So, like, for example, when one prompt is that restating, or that one strategy is restating, where the student is listening to the other and then making it their own by applying what they learn. So, like, it would be, what did Jacob say? And then, Sophia, can you use Jacob's idea and give me an example of your own? So that would be something that I expect students to do. And that's putting kids on the spot time to time. So, you and I talked about this, Amanda, that wait time, that productive wait time is really important, because, they are thinking, they are engaging, but they need that time to construct a meaningful, on topic answer. And so that, I think that's another important thing to remember, that wait time when students are restating what they heard. Anything more before I ask another question?
No, I do. I definitely agree with you. And I think that initially it feels on the spot perhaps, but as it becomes a part of the classroom culture, it's just that it becomes another norm. It's expected. They know they need to be listening because they may be restating, or they may be relating ideas. So I think that it just becomes part of our classroom norm, which is it's great to see once you start working on it more and more.
And on that note, it must happen often in your classroom as it does in mine. So how often do you hold accountable talk?
Daily. I mean, absolutely, I think it happens daily. Maybe not in every subject daily, but absolutely at some point in their day, remote learning or at school. It definitely happens often.
Yeah, for me, it happens daily as well. And like what you just said, not for all subjects, but like, for example, definitely during math time. And
Mm.
for me, I like an intimate setting. So it would be in a small group setting for math number talks, because number talks is definitely an example of accountable talk, right?
Yes.
So when I am meeting with a group of 6, right, and another 6 and another 6, and I'm asking them, how many do you see and how do you see it, right? Then that discovery, whatever comes out of the students, whatever notices that comes out of the students, becomes really productive, their own. And that intimate setting allows everyone's voice to be heard, everyone's voice to come out. So yeah, do you want to add more to that?
No, I think that I completely agree with you, and I think it's spot on.
Yeah. Do you hold accountable talk in a larger setting? Because I find it difficult for me to do that, but that's why I like the smaller group setting. But what about you? How do you, how do you conduct yours?
I do. So I'm thinking of like specifically during journal time. The students they read their own entries after they have time to write and think about what they want to write. We have a share out session where they share out their ideas, and then in the beginning I was modeling, but now they ask their peers. So we're talking a class of 23. They'll say, who can summarize my writing? And then they pick a student, and then the student will then summarize back, restate what the student said. And then they either say, so they're still accountable. They say, thank you for listening to my writing, or thank you, but that was not what I said, and kind of give a little spiel about that. So that's one way we use it in a large setting.
You and I were talking about gestures while we were prepping for this, and I stated earlier about student engagement, how that that's really important, and how accountable talk really lends itself to student engagement. And so, while you have a speaker, you have all these listeners, right? How do they communicate to the speaker that they're with them, that they hear them, whether they agree or not, but they hear them and they're with them? How does that happen in your class?
So it happens a few different ways. We have gestures, so we do use gestures in our classroom for different ideas. So if they are creating an idea, they create an idea. It's coming out of your brain and creating that idea. They're part of the LAUSD ELD standard, Start Smarts. So I didn't make it up. That's where it came from. But I definitely use it. They also use Clarify, which is like, cleaning your glasses. We talk about like rubbing your eyes in the morning.
I thought it was binoculars.
Oh yeah, those two, any of those will work. But making it more clear.
Yeah.
And so the students will then use it if someone's speaking and they don't understand their idea, they start clarifying, they start, poking their eyes in like a way to say, hey, can you clarify your idea? I model it as well, but now the students are starting to do it. And same thing with support. So giving more support to your idea, support with the forefinger, supporting your other hand, and the same thing. So they use those gestures as well towards each other, like when the students start speaking and, supporting, give me more support to your idea, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then we also use reactions in the Zoom world. So in the virtual world, which is all new to us, they're starting to use the reactions. And I know with different versions of Zoom, you may not have all the reactions, but we have 6. And so they use the heart one to show like the they feel sympathy towards what you're saying. So they would use the emojis in the Zoom world with the heart, meaning like they're showing empathy to what you're saying or the other students are saying. They give a thumbs up in agreement. We've agreed that that's an agreement. They do the clapping hands when they think that that's like a great idea. They do a laughing face when they also think it's funny, but it's just a way to relate to what the student is saying, to the other students are saying, and be held accountable. I am actively listening. I could potentially restate what you're saying, and then I feel some way when you say this.
Yeah, and for my class, my students, we're doing a lot of this. You and me, like, oh, that was my idea. I agree with you. Or, this, like, no, I don't see it that way. And if I get a gesture like that, then yeah, I'll say, do you want to respond? Why do you disagree? What do you notice? I got that from you, Amanda. Not what I think, but what I noticed. Do you want to talk a little bit more about why this is what I notice is a stronger, more appropriate sentence starter than I think? Do you want to explain that part?
Sure. So we in part of that, setting up that conversation norms and using the language frames, we set up, we talk about academic language and being a scholar and being in school and what that looks like, as opposed to just having a conversation with our friends. And so that, I think, is, something you would say to your friends, but saying I notice is really, I took the time, I observed something, and now I've thought about it, and here is my idea, I'm presenting it. So by using that stronger language, they're also signifying that they've had that time to think and all of those other skills.
So I mentioned at the beginning of this episode where accountable talk happens during deep learning, right? There's surface learning and then deep learning that and in hopes, or the goal is to learn, which is transfer what they've gleaned from accountable talk to a product, right? Whether it's writing, whether it's a math explanation, whether it's a scientific conclusion, what have you. So Amanda, how did you see evidence of learning from accountable talk in student work? And I'll share out how I saw it in mine.
So I agree that I see it a lot more. I think it lends itself more readily in mathematics. I think it can be used throughout every subject, but I think that it's oftentimes easier or more readily said with those conversations. So we use the read, draw, write strategy, and I see the evidence most in their writing, especially because their application problem will ask them, like in today particularly, it had 2 students present 2 different arrays where we're learning multiplication, and it asked them which student was correct. And I can see in their writing that they're able to agree with that student or disagree, and then they're able to provide evidence of it, and I think it's because of the accountable talk.
Yeah, and for me, we're working on addition strategies, and one is counting on, one is looking at doubles plus 1, and I'm seeing that so we had discoveries during accountable talk, number talk, about those discoveries, those addition strategies, and I'm seeing that that present itself in the students' own work, independent work, where they're sending me videos of, when we were looking at how many dots today and we counted on, I tried that, or I did that, and I'm seeing evidence of that. They may not explicitly say, "Oh, I tried it," but I see that they're linking what we did during our math accountable talk, number talk, to their practice that day, independent practice. And so that transfer of learning was really just really neat to see, and
Yeah.
it excites us as teachers
Yeah.
when
I always say it makes my teacher heart happy.
yeah. Exactly. So Amanda, thank you so much for putting accountable talk on my radar. I remember where I sat, where I was when you brought it up at a staff meeting, and I went, oh, tell me more about that. And I'm glad we got a chance to talk about it here today. And so, teachers, thank you for tuning in, and hopefully we gave you some ideas about accountable talk and the importance of it, and the frequency that it does need to be frequent um, to promote learning, right, and student engagement. All right, Amanda, thank you again for your time, and
Thank
teachers,
you.
we'll see you again next episode.